Have you ever noticed that we live running away from silence? This question isn't rhetorical. Think about it for a moment. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? You probably grab your phone. Before your feet even touch the ground, you're already connected, already consuming, already listening. In the car, the radio turns on automatically. At home, the television stays on even when no one is watching, just to fill the void. Headphones have become our invisible armor against silence. Podcasts, music, audiobooks, news, always something playing, always something filling the empty space that should be sacred. But what if I told you that what you avoid most is exactly what you need most? This unsettling truth was revealed by an experienced priest during a sermon that changed the lives of thousands. He said something that resonated in the hearts of all who heard. True silence is not just the absence of speech. True silence is of the heart. It's not about shutting your mouth. It's about quieting the inner storm that constantly rages within you, while you fill your life with noise, external noise, digital noise, emotional noise. God is trying to speak to you on a frequency that can only be picked up in profound silence. He is not shouting. He is not competing with the chaos. He is whispering, patiently waiting for you to finally shut up and listen. Let's return to the biblical story that perfectly illustrates this. We are in Matthew 8:23-27. Jesus and his disciples are in a boat, crossing the Sea of Galilee. The disciples were experienced fishermen who knew that sea like no one else. But then, out of nowhere, a terrible storm arises. It's not an ordinary rain. It's a storm that would send even professional fishermen into absolute panic. Imagine the scene. The waves crash against the boat with devastating force. Water rushes in. The wind howls. The disciples scream in despair, trying to control the situation. They row with all their might. They shout to each other, giving orders, trying to save themselves. It's total chaos. It's utter noise. And where is Jesus? Asleep. Completely peaceful, sleeping in the midst of the storm. The disciples, in a panic, wake him shouting, "Master, Master, we're going to die." They are making noise, shouting, desperate. And Jesus, calmly, gets up. He doesn't shout. He doesn't panic. He simply says, "Silence. Calm down." And the storm obeys. But here's the truth that nobody talks about. The storm wasn't just external. The storm was also internal. The disciples were making so much noise with their shouts, their worries, their desperate attempts to control the situation that they couldn't hear Jesus' voice. They couldn't perceive that there was someone there who had power over the storm. This is your life right now. You're in the storm, making noise, shouting, trying to control everything. And Jesus is there, waiting for you to finally shut up so he can speak. Today, you will discover why saints, mystics, and truly transformed people have mastered an art that most of us have completely lost: the art of sacred silence. It is not a mystical or inaccessible art. It is a skill that anyone can develop, but it requires courage. It requires a willingness to confront oneself. Because here's the problem. When you finally fall silent, you find yourself, and we don't always like what we find. But it is precisely in this encounter that transformation begins. In this sermon, we will explore 3 revolutionary dimensions of silence that will completely change your relationship with God, with others, and with yourself. We will discover how silence heals, how silence reveals, how silence transforms. But first, let me ask a question that will only be answered at the end of this journey. If God wants to speak to you, why are you making so much noise and not hearing him? Have you ever stopped to think about what it really means to be alive in 2025? We live in an age of infinite information, constant connection, and uninterrupted visual and auditory stimuli. We have never had so much access to knowledge, entertainment, and relationships. And paradoxically, we have never felt so empty, so anxious, so lost. The people around you, perhaps, even you, carry an invisible weight: depression, anxiety, insomnia, broken relationships, meaningless careers, lives that seem to be happening for other people, not for you. What's the problem? The problem is that we're trying to solve spiritual problems with material solutions. We're trying to fill a void that only God can fill with more noise, more shopping, more distractions. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The more we try, the worse it gets. But there is an other side that we need to reach. A place of inner peace where God can guide us personally. A place where the answers you seek don't come from outside, but from within. A place that is only accessible through silence. Let's go back to that story I mentioned, Jesus calming the storm. But this time, let's understand what was really happening. The disciples were in a panic. They were shouting. They were trying to control the situation with their own strength. They were making noise. And while they were making noise, they couldn't hear Jesus. They couldn't perceive that there was someone there who had authority over the storm. Then Jesus woke up and said, "Silence. Calm down." But here's the part that changes everything. He wasn't just talking to the storm. He was talking to the disciples. He was saying, you need to be quiet. You need to calm your hearts. You need to stop shouting and start listening. And that is exactly what God is saying to you right now. Are you in a storm? Perhaps it's a storm of financial problems, broken relationships, failing health, or a directionless career. Perhaps it's an emotional storm: anxiety, fear, depression, despair. Perhaps it's a spiritual storm: you feel you've lost your connection with God, that you're alone, that God isn't answering your prayers. And while you're in this storm, you're making noise, you're shouting, you're trying to control everything with your own strength. You're filling every moment with distractions so you don't have to face the reality of your situation. But God is there, waiting for you to finally shut up. Because here's the truth: no one wants to hear. God speaks first. Prayer is the answer, not the other way around. You don't start by speaking and expecting God to answer. You start by listening to what God is already saying, and then you respond. Most of us treat prayer as a desperate monologue. You kneel, pour out your requests, your wish list, your complaints, and then run off. You don't expect an answer. You don't create space to listen. You just talk, talk, talk. But Jesus was different. Jesus was the man of questions. He provoked reflection. He created inner silence before any answer. He taught through parables that demanded meditation. He spent entire nights in silent prayer. He understood something we have lost. True prayer is dialogue, and all dialogue begins with listening. Think about a real conversation. If you're talking the whole time, you never hear what the other person has to say. You never really get to know that person. You never understand their thoughts, their feelings, their intentions. The conversation is one-sided. It's a monologue disguised as a dialogue. That's exactly how most of us pray. But when you finally become silent, when you create space to listen, something extraordinary happens. You begin to know God not as an abstract idea, but as a real presence. You begin to hear His voice not as an imagination, but as clear guidance. You begin to receive answers you didn't even know you needed. Now, let's explore the 3 revolutionary dimensions of silence that will transform your life. First dimension, listening to God. This is the foundation of everything. If you can't hear God, you're navigating life blindly. You're making unwise decisions. You're following paths that aren't yours. You're living the life other people expect you to live, not the life God has prepared for you. Second dimension, listening to others. When you learn to listen to God, you naturally begin to listen to the people around you differently. You stop listening to argue back. You stop listening to defend your point of view. You begin to listen, to understand, to love, to serve. Your relationships are transformed. People feel truly heard by you, something that is increasingly rare in this world. Third dimension, listening to yourself. This is the most uncomfortable one, because when you finally fall silent, you find yourself, you confront your fears, your insecurities, your wounds. You see who you truly are, without the masks, without the distractions. And it is in this encounter that true transformation begins. But here's the problem most of us face. We can't hear God if our hearts are screaming with anxieties, worries, and inner turmoil. Imagine you're trying to hear someone whispering while a band is playing next to you. Impossible, right? You can't hear the whisper because there's too much noise. That's exactly how it works, spiritually. Your heart is screaming. Your worries are screaming. Your insecurities are screaming. Your ego is screaming. And while all this screams, you can't hear the gentle whisper of God. The silence of the heart creates the sacred space where God can speak. Personally, to each of us, completely transforming our spiritual life. It's not magic. It's not mysticism. It's simply the natural law of communication. To listen, you need to be silent. And this is the journey you are about to embark on. A journey that will require courage because you will have to confront yourself. A journey that will require patience because transformation doesn't happen overnight. But a journey that will completely change who you are and how you live. Get ready, because everything you're about to learn will challenge everything you believe about living a meaningful life. Excellent. Let's move on to topic 3. Silence as an essential tool for divine listening and spiritual growth. Topic 3. Silence as an essential tool for divine listening and spiritual growth. Estimated duration, 2 to 3 minutes. Words, 2,100 plus. Let me ask you a question that will bother you. When was the last time you truly listened to God? I'm not talking about reading the Bible. I'm not talking about going to church. I'm not talking about that emotional moment in a service. I'm talking about hearing God personally, intimately, in a way that transforms your life. If you're honest with yourself, you probably can't remember. And do you know why? Because listening to God's word is essentially listening in silence, for He is the one who speaks first, and we respond. But you have never created the space for that. You have never been silent enough for Him to speak. Most of us treat prayer as a desperate monologue. You kneel or not even that. You just close your eyes for a second and begin to pour out your requests. God, I need money. God, I need a relationship. God, I need health. God, I need success. You pour, and then you run off, expecting God to answer like a restaurant waiter who took your order. But that's not prayer. That's a spiritual delivery request. True prayer is completely different. True prayer is encounter. It is communion. It is a profound dialogue between you and the Creator of the universe. And all dialogue begins with listening. Let's look at Jesus. He was the man of questions. When people came to Him with ready answers, He asked questions that forced them to think. When the disciples wanted quick answers, He told parables that required meditation. When the crowd wanted spectacular miracles, He withdrew to pray in silence. Luke 5:16 says, "But Jesus often withdrew to solitary places and prayed." He didn't pray in public to impress. He prayed silently, alone, to hear His Father. He spent entire nights in prayer. He rose early to pray before dawn. He understood something fundamental that we have completely lost. You cannot know God without silence. But here's the problem most of us face. When we try to be silent, it's uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. You sit down to pray in silence, and immediately your mind starts screaming. You think about work. You think about bills to pay. You think about that conversation you had yesterday. You think about how you were humiliated. You think about how you humiliated someone. You think about everything except God. Your body feels restless. You want to move. You want to grab your phone. You want to do anything but sit there in silence. And then you give up. You think, this isn't for me. I can't meditate. I can't pray silently. My mind is too restless. But here's the truth. The discomfort you feel is exactly the sign that you need it. When you turn off the music, when you turn off your phone, when you turn off the distractions, what's left? Yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your wounds, your insecurities, everything you've spent your whole life avoiding, and it's frightening. That's why you make noise. That's why you distract yourself. That's why you fill your life with activities, relationships, and consumption. You're running away from yourself. But here's the problem. You can't grow spiritually while you're running away from yourself. Spiritual growth isn't about adding more knowledge. It's not about reading more books about God. It's not about learning more doctrines. Spiritual growth is about inner transformation. It's about becoming a different person. It's about letting go of who you were and being born into who God wants you to be. And this transformation only happens in silence. Let's think about how physical growth works. When you sleep, your body repairs itself. When you rest, your muscles recover. When you stop exercising, your body regenerates. Growth doesn't happen during activity. Growth happens during rest. It's the same thing spiritually. You don't grow spiritually while you're busy, distracted, making noise. You grow when you stop, when you are silent, when you create space for God to work in you. But most of us never create that space. We're always busy, always doing something, always rushing. And then we wonder why we're not growing, why we're not changing, why we keep making the same mistakes, why we keep getting stuck in the same patterns. The answer is simple. You were never quiet enough for God to transform you. Now, let me show you what happens when you finally create that space. When you truly silence yourself, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your thoughts begin to calm down. Your emotions begin to stabilize. You begin to see things clearly. You begin to hear an inner voice that is not your own, it is the voice of God. This voice doesn't shout, it whispers, it's gentle, it's loving, but it's absolutely clear. And when you hear it, you know it's God speaking. She might say, you need to forgive this person, and you feel the truth of that in your heart. She might say, you're on the wrong track. Change direction, and you can feel the clarity of that. She can say, you are loved, you are valuable, you are worthy, and you feel the reality of that transforming your self-esteem. But you only hear that voice when you are silent, when you create space, when you stop making noise. And here's the most incredible thing. That voice isn't your imagination. That voice is real. That voice is God speaking to you personally. God is not distant. God is not too busy to talk to you. God is here now, waiting for you to finally shut up so that He can speak. But you need to create the space. You need to be silent. You need to be willing to face yourself, your fears, your insecurities, and allow God to work in you. Because here's the truth no one wants to hear. Silence is uncomfortable at first, but it's absolutely transformative in the end. The first few days are difficult. Your mind screams, your body agitates, you want to give up. But if you persevere, you truly commit to the silence, something changes. You begin to hear. You begin to feel God's presence. You begin to receive guidance. You begin to be transformed. And this transformation is no small one. It's radical. It changes how you think, how you feel, how you act, how you live. People who have learned to listen to God in silence report profound changes in their lives. Broken relationships have been restored. Meaningless careers have gained purpose. Empty lives have been filled with meaning. People who were lost have found their way. And it all began with silence. So the question you need to answer is, are you willing to be silent in order to hear God? Because if you're not there, nothing will change. You'll keep making noise, keep being distracted, keep feeling empty. You'll keep praying without hearing an answer. You'll keep seeking God without finding Him. But if you are willing, if you truly want to hear God, if you truly want to be transformed, then you need to learn to be silent. And that's exactly what we're going to explore in the following topics. There's a story in the Bible that completely changes how you understand God's presence. It's the story of Elijah, and it's so profound that I'm going to tell it in detail because every detail matters. Elijah was a powerful prophet. He had done extraordinary things. He had called down fire from heaven. He had raised the dead. He had confronted kings and queens. He was a man of God, an instrument of divine power. But then, everything collapsed. Queen Jezebel, a wicked woman who hated God and everything Elijah stood for, threatened to kill him. And Elijah, despite all his faith, despite all the miracles he had witnessed, panicked. He fled. He ran into the desert. He hid in a cave. And there, alone, desperate, wounded, Elijah asked to die. He said, "Lord, that's enough. Take my life. I can't take it anymore." He was broken. He was empty. He had lost hope. And then God spoke to him, but not in the way you would expect. God said, "Come out of the cave and stand on the mountain before me, for the Lord is about to pass by." Elijah went out. He was expecting a spectacular manifestation from God. He was expecting something that would confirm divine power, something that would restore him, something that would inspire him again. And then it began. First, a devastating hurricane. It wasn't an ordinary wind. It was a hurricane so powerful it split rocks. Imagine the force of that. Rocks being split by the wind. It's a manifestation of absolute power. Elijah must have thought, here it is. Here is God in all his glory. But then the Bible says something that changes everything. But the Lord was not in the hurricane. God was not in the hurricane. Then came the next one, a violent earthquake. The earth trembled. The ground opened up. Everything was shaken. It's another manifestation of absolute power. Elijah must have thought, now? Yes, now God will reveal himself. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. God was not in the earthquake. Then came the third, an intense fire, flames consuming everything around them, devastating heat. Another manifestation of absolute power. Elias must be thinking, this is it. This has to be it. But the Lord was not in the fire. God was not in the fire. And then, after all these spectacular demonstrations, after all this noise, after all this show of power, a gentle breeze came, a delicate whisper, and there, in that silent whisper, was God. Let this sink in for a moment. God wasn't in spectacular miracles. God wasn't in displays of power. God wasn't in the noise, the drama, the intense emotion. God was in the whisper, in the silence, in the gentle breeze. This story reveals a truth that completely changes how you seek God. We spend our lives looking for God in spectacular miracles, in intense emotions, but He speaks in subtle, delicate ways. Think about your life. Where do you expect to find God? Probably in dramatic moments, in a miracle, in a healing, in a clear and undeniable manifestation. You want God to do something grand, something everyone can see, something that proves His existence. But God doesn't work that way. God works in subtle ways. He works in silence. He works in small moments, in whispers, in intuitions, in coincidences that are not coincidences. Have you ever had a thought that changed your life? That thought that came out of nowhere, that you weren't expecting, that simply appeared in your mind and transformed everything? That was God speaking. Have you ever felt an inexplicable peace during a moment of crisis? That feeling that everything will be all right even when logically it shouldn't be. That was God speaking. Have you ever received a word from someone that arrived exactly when you needed it? That message that seemed like a coincidence but changed your perspective. That was God speaking. But you only realize these things when you cultivate deep inner silence. Because here's the problem. You're so busy looking for spectacular miracles that you're missing God's gentle whispers. You expect God to shout, and He is whispering. You expect Him to do something dramatic, and He is doing something subtle. You expect Him to prove His existence undeniably, and He is speaking in a way that only you can hear, in a way that demands faith. And that's exactly how it should be. Because if God shouted, everyone would hear. If God did something dramatic, everyone would see. If God proved His existence undeniably, there would be no room for faith. There would only be knowledge, and God doesn't want forced knowledge. He wants a relationship based on faith, so He speaks in a whisper. He works subtly. He reveals Himself only to those who are willing to be silent to hear Him. Now, let me give you a logical explanation for this, because you might be thinking, okay, but why isn't God in the miracles? Why isn't He in the hurricane, the earthquake, the fire? The answer is profound, because God is not brute force. God is love. Brute force impresses. Brute force frightens. Brute force dominates. But brute force doesn't transform. You can be dominated by brute force and still be the same person inside. But love transforms. Love heals. Love changes who you are at your core. And love doesn't shout. Love whispers. Love is gentle. Love is delicate. Love demands that you come closer, that you listen, that you respond freely. That's why God is in the whisper, not in the hurricane. Now, let me illustrate this with something impossible to ignore. Think of the person who loved you most in your life. Perhaps it was your mother, your father, a grandfather, a close friend. Think about how that love manifested itself. It probably wasn't through shouting. It probably wasn't through dramatic displays. It was probably through small gestures. A hug at the right moment. A word of encouragement when you were discouraged. A silent presence when you were suffering. A look that said, "I believe in you," without needing words. That love transformed you. That love made you who you are. And it was conveyed mainly through silence, through subtlety, through a gentle breeze. That's exactly how God loves you. Now, let's make a biblical comparison with the modern world, because this is crucial for you to understand why it's so difficult to hear God today. In today's world, everything is noise. Everything is dramatic. Everything is a spectacle. Social media rewards noise. Algorithms promote drama. The media thrives on sensationalism. Everything subtle, everything silent, everything delicate is ignored. You're used to hurricanes, earthquakes, and fire. You're used to intense stimuli, extreme emotions, and constant drama. And then you expect God to work the same way. You expect Him to shout. You expect Him to do something dramatic. You expect Him to prove His existence undeniably. But God doesn't work that way. God works in a completely opposite way to the world. While the world shouts, God whispers. While the world is dramatic, God is subtle. While the world demands attention, God waits patiently. And that's why you're not listening to God. It's not because He isn't speaking. It's because you're so used to hurricanes that you can't hear the gentle breeze. But here's the good news. You can learn to listen to the gentle breeze. You can train your heart to perceive God's whisper, and it all begins with silence. When you are silent, you become unaccustomed to the noise. When you are silent, you begin to notice things that previously went unnoticed. When you are silent, you develop the spiritual sensitivity to hear the gentle voice of God. It's like when you enter a silent room after being in a noisy place. At first, the silence seems strange, almost uncomfortable. But after a few minutes, you start to hear sounds you didn't notice before. A clock ticking, someone breathing, the wind outside. Sounds that were always there, but that you couldn't hear because there was too much noise. That's exactly how it works spiritually. God is always speaking. God is always whispering. But you can't hear Him because there's too much noise in your life. When you finally become silent, you begin to hear what has always been there. And this is the transformation you are about to experience. Take this test now. It's not a pass or fail test. It's a test of honesty with yourself. When someone is talking to you, your spouse, your child, your friend, your coworker, are you really listening or just waiting for your turn to speak? Be honest. Most of us are waiting for our turn to speak. Do you know how it works? The person starts talking. You hear the first few words. But then your mind starts working. You start thinking about how you're going to respond. You start preparing your arguments. You start thinking about how you're going to rebut what the person is saying. And while you're doing all that, you're not really listening. You're just waiting for the person to finish so you can begin. That's fake listening. That's pretending to listen while actually preparing to speak. And most of us do this all the time. But there is a revolutionary way of listening that most of us have never experienced. Listening to understand, not to respond. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. An experienced priest, a man who had spent decades counseling people, shared his counseling secret with a group of seminarians. He said, "Do you want to know how to help people? Here's the secret. Let the person talk." The seminarians were confused. "But Father, what if the person is wrong? What if they are doing something harmful? Shouldn't we correct them?" The priest replied, "Let the person speak. Then repeat what you understood and ask, 'Is that what you meant?'" This simple practice transforms lives. And he was right. Because here's the truth nobody wants to hear. People don't want to be corrected. People want to be heard. When you're suffering, when you're confused, when you're going through a crisis, you don't want someone to come along and say, "You're wrong. Here's the right answer." You want someone to sit down, listen, and say, "I understand. I see what you're going through. You're not alone." That's the difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. When you listen in order to respond, you are focused on yourself. You are thinking about how you will look good. You are thinking about how you will impress the person with your wisdom. You are thinking about how you will win the argument. But when you listen to understand, you are focused on the other person. You are trying to see the world through their eyes. You are trying to feel what they are feeling. You are trying to truly understand who they are and what they are going through. And this understanding changes everything. Because when a person feels truly heard, when they realize that you're not just waiting for your turn to speak, but that you genuinely want to understand them, something extraordinary happens. They open up, they share things they've never shared before. They feel safe, they feel loved. And it is in this space of safety and love that true transformation happens. Now, let me show you how this works in practice. Imagine your child comes home and says, "Nobody likes me at school, I'm a failure." You have two options. Option 1, listen to respond. You immediately start to clap back. "No, you're not a failure, you're smart, you're cool. People will like you. You're trying to fix the problem quickly. You're trying to make your child feel better with comforting words." But your son doesn't feel heard. He feels you haven't really understood what he's going through. He feels you're downplaying his feelings. And he shuts the door. He doesn't share anything with you anymore. Option 2, listen to understand. You sit down, you look him in the eye. You say, "Tell me more. What happened?" You let him talk. You don't interrupt. You don't offer solutions. You just listen. After he finishes, you repeat what you understood. So you feel alone at school. You feel like people don't accept you. You're feeling like a failure. Is that it? Your son might correct you. "No, it's not quite like that. It's more than." And he continues talking, sharing more deeply. You repeat again. "So you feel you did something wrong, and that's why people don't like you. Is that it?" And his son says, "Yes, exactly. You understood." And at that moment, something changes. Your child feels truly heard. He feels understood. He feels loved. And it is in this space that he is open to receiving help, to receiving guidance, to being transformed. That's the difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. Now, let me connect this to God, because this is where it gets really profound. Do you know what's most incredible? That's exactly how God listens to us. God is not preparing an answer while you pray. God is not thinking about how he will refute your arguments. God is not waiting for your turn to speak. God is truly present. God understands every word. God feels every emotion. God sees you completely, without judgment, without criticism, only with absolute love. When you pray, God listens to understand. He wants to understand who you are, what you are going through, what you are feeling. He wants to know you deeply. And that's why true prayer is so transformative. Because when you finally feel truly heard by God, when you realize that he's not judging you, that he's not criticizing you, that he's simply loving you, something changes within you. You open up, you share things you've never shared before. You feel safe, you feel loved. And it's in this space that true transformation happens. But here's the problem. You can't experience this divine listening if you don't learn to listen in this way. Because the way you listen to people is the way you listen to God. If you're always waiting for your turn to speak to people, you're also waiting for your turn to speak to God. If you're always trying to rebut people, you're also trying to rebut God. If you can't listen to people to understand, you can't listen to God to understand either. But when you learn to listen to people in order to understand, when you develop that skill, that sensitivity, that ability to be genuinely present with someone, you naturally begin to hear God in that way as well. And that's when the real transformation begins. Now, let me show you how this works in practice with God. You're going through a crisis. You're confused. You're scared. You kneel and begin to pray. But instead of pouring out your requests, you do something different. You become silent. You create space to listen, and then you hear it. Not necessarily an audible voice, but a feeling, an intuition, a clarity that comes from within. Perhaps it is. You are not alone. I am here with you. And when you hear that, when you truly feel that God is there, understanding you, loving you, something changes. Your fear diminishes. Your confusion clears. You feel safe because you finally feel heard. You finally feel understood. You finally feel loved. And it is in this space that true transformation takes place. But you only experience this when you learn to listen in order to understand, not to respond. Now, I'll be honest with you. This is difficult, very difficult. Because listening to understand requires you to put your ego aside. It requires you to stop being right. It requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you to truly care about the other person more than you care about yourself. And most of us weren't taught how to do that. We were taught to defend our point of view. We were taught to be right. We were taught to win arguments. But when you learn to listen in order to understand, when you truly develop that skill, your life changes completely. Your relationships transform. People feel truly heard by you. They open up, they share, they trust you, and you become someone who truly makes a difference in people's lives. And most importantly, your relationship with God is transformed. You begin to hear God in ways you never have before. You begin to feel His presence in ways you never have before. You begin to be transformed in ways you never imagined. All because you learned to listen in order to understand, not to respond. There is an ancient technique that monks use to filter their words. A technique so powerful that if you applied it to your life, it would completely transform your relationships, your reputation, and your inner peace. This technique is known as the 3 sieves. The story goes that a man went to Socrates, the great Greek philosopher, and said, "Socrates, I have something important to tell you about your friend." Socrates interrupted him and said, "Wait. Before you speak, I would like you to pass what you are going to say through 3 sieves. The man was confused. 3 sieves, what do you mean? Socrates replied, "The first sieve is truth. Is what you are about to tell me true?" The man thought for a moment and said, "Well, I'm not sure. I heard it from someone who heard it from someone else." Socrates said, "Then you're not sure if it's true. Let's move on to the second sieve. The second sieve is necessity. Is it necessary for you to tell me this? Will it build something or just satisfy your desire to gossip?" The man thought again and admitted, "No, it's not really necessary." Socrates continued, "Then let's move on to the third sieve. The third sieve is charity. Will your words heal or wound? Will they build up or tear down?" The man remained silent. He knew the answer. Socrates concluded, "If what you are about to say does not pass through the 3 sieves, if it is not true, if it is not necessary, if it is not philanthropic, then silence is golden." This story is as old as it is powerful, and it reveals a truth that can transform your life. Most of the words you speak shouldn't be spoken. Let me explain the 3 sieves in detail, because each one is crucial. Before saying anything, you need to ask yourself, is it true? It's not, I think it's true. It's not, it's probably true. Is it absolute truth? Because here's the problem. Most of us say things we're not sure are true. We hear something from someone who heard it from someone else, who maybe saw it somewhere, and then we repeat it as if it were fact. That's gossip. That's a rumor. That's a lie disguised as the truth. And the consequences are devastating. You say something about someone that isn't true. That person finds out, your relationship is destroyed. Your reputation is tarnished. And all because you said something you weren't sure was true. Or worse, you say something that is technically true, but you've distorted it. You've taken it out of context. You've exaggerated. You've added your personal interpretation. And now, the truth has become a lie. The first filter is simple. If you're not absolutely sure it's true, don't say it. This immediately eliminates most gossip, rumors, and unfounded criticism. Now, let's assume that what you're saying is true. You're sure of it. It's a fact. But now you need to ask yourself, is it necessary? Even if it's true, does it need to be said? Will it build something or just satisfy your ego? This is the filter that most of us fail to see through. Because you can say something that is true, but completely unnecessary. You can say something that is true, but that will hurt the person without any benefit. You can say something that is true, but only to make yourself feel good, to seem smart, to win an argument. For example, you're in a meeting and your colleague makes a suggestion that you think won't work. You might say, "That won't work. I've tried something similar before and it failed." That's true, but is it necessary? Will it build anything? Or will it just discourage your colleague and make you look negative? Perhaps it would be better to ask, "How do you think this will work?" and let your colleague think about it, or offer a constructive suggestion instead of just criticizing. The second filter eliminates words that are true but unnecessary, words that are true but harmful, words that are true but selfish. Finally, you need to ask yourself, is he, she charitable? Will your words heal or hurt? Will they build up or tear down? Will they bring light or darkness? That's the sieve of love. Because you can say something that is true and necessary, but it's said in such a cruel way that it destroys the person. For example, you see that your friend is making a mistake. It's true that he's making a mistake. You need to tell him, but how are you going to say it? You could say, "You're so stupid. How can you not see that you're making a mistake?" That's true and necessary, but it's not kind. You're hurting your friend. Or you could say, "I see you're going in that direction and I'm afraid you might get hurt. May I share my perspective?" This is true, necessary, and compassionate. You are protecting your friend with love. The third filter is about how you say things. It's about speaking with love, with kindness, with compassion. Now, let me show you the true power of this technique. Imagine how many relationships could be saved if people applied the 3 filters before speaking. You wouldn't say that cruel thing to your spouse that hurt them deeply. You wouldn't spread that rumor about your colleague that ruined their reputation. You wouldn't make that sarcastic comment to your child that made them feel inadequate. Imagine how many rumors would be avoided. How many arguments would not happen. How much suffering would be prevented. But it's not just about avoiding harm. It's also about creating something positive. When you learn to speak only what is true, necessary, and charitable, your words gain power. Your words begin to heal. Your words begin to build up. Your words begin to transform. People begin to trust you because they know you won't gossip about them. People begin to open up to you because they know you will speak with love. People begin to be transformed by your words because you are speaking with wisdom. You become a person who truly makes a difference. You become someone people want to be around. You become someone God uses to transform lives. There is a verse in the Bible that reveals the secret of one of the most extraordinary women who ever lived. A woman who faced impossible circumstances, who saw her son suffer unimaginably, who experienced profound joys and sorrows. And through it all, she maintained an inner peace that defies explanation. This verse is found in Luke 2:19, and it says, "She treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart." We are talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus. Consider the context. Mary had just miraculously given birth to Jesus. Shepherds arrived with an extraordinary story about angels. Wise men traveled from distant lands bringing gifts. Simeon, a righteous and devout man, approached her in the temple and said something disturbing. "A sword will pierce your own soul." All of this was confusing. All of this was extraordinary. All of this was frightening. And what did Mary do? She didn't panic. She didn't demand immediate answers. She didn't try to understand everything at once. She saved, she pondered, she treasured. Let me explain what this means, because it is profoundly important. When the Bible says that Mary treasured up all these things, she is not merely storing information. She is treating each event as a precious piece of a divine puzzle. She is recognizing that there is a pattern, a picture, a purpose that is not yet visible, but which will eventually be revealed. When the Bible says that she pondered them in her heart, it is talking about deep contemplation. It is talking about silent reflection. It is talking about allowing the events to work in her heart, transforming her from the inside out. Now, let me give you a comparison that will make you understand perfectly. Have you ever put together a jigsaw puzzle? If you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you look at the separate pieces, especially the reverse-sided, looks like total chaos, nonsensical. You see random colors, patterns that don't make sense, pieces that don't seem to fit together. If you didn't know it was a jigsaw puzzle, you'd think it was just trash, but you trust the process. You take a piece, you look for another that fits, you put it in place. You take another piece, you look for another that fits, you put it in place. And slowly, very slowly, the image begins to appear. At first, you can't see what it is. You only see fragments. Maybe you see a patch of blue sky. Maybe you see a piece of a tree. Maybe you see a piece of a face, but you can't see the whole picture. But you keep going. You trust the process. And then, suddenly, the pieces start to fit together in a way that makes sense. The blue sky connects with the clouds. The tree connects with the ground. The face connects with the body. And finally, when you put the last piece on, the complete picture is revealed. And it's beautiful. It's perfect. It's exactly what you expected, or perhaps even better. That's how your life is. You are living a divine puzzle. You are only seeing the confusing reverse side. You are only seeing fragments. You can't see the complete picture. And it's frightening. You want immediate answers. You want to know why this is happening. You want to know how it will end. You want to see the whole picture now. But you can't. Because you're in the middle of the process. You're putting the puzzle together. You can't see the picture while you're putting it together. And this is where most of us fail. We panic. We give up. We throw the pieces on the floor and say, "This doesn't work. This is too confusing. I can't do this." But Mary didn't do that. Mary kept quiet. Mary pondered. Mary trusted the process. Now, let me take you on a journey that shows you how this works in practice. Imagine you're going through a series of confusing events. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you had a relationship that ended. Maybe you received a frightening diagnosis. Maybe you're facing a financial crisis. Right now, it just seems like confusion. It just seems like pain. It just seems like injustice. You want to know why? You want to know how it will end. You want God to explain everything now. But God doesn't explain. God simply says, "Trust me." And this is where you have a choice. You can do what most of us do. You can panic. You can become bitter. You can question God. You can give up. You can try to control the situation with your own strength. Or you can do what Mary did. You can keep it. You can meditate on it. You can trust the process. If you choose to keep and meditate, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to see patterns. You begin to recognize that the job you lost was keeping you trapped. You begin to see that the relationship that ended was harming you. You begin to understand that that frightening diagnosis is forcing you to reevaluate your priorities. The pieces are starting to fall into place. And then, months later, or perhaps years later, you look back and see the complete picture. And you are amazed. Because you see that everything, absolutely everything, was working together for your good. You see that God was orchestrating everything. You see that there was no chance, only divine providence. And you regret doubting. You regret panicking. You regret trying to control everything. Because now you see that God knew exactly what He was doing all along. This is the transformation that happens when you learn to save and meditate. Now, let me connect this to silence, because this is where it gets really profound. Collecting and meditating isn't something you do while you're busy, distracted, or making noise. Collecting and meditating is something you do in silence. It's when you sit alone in silence and allow the events of your life to work in your heart. It's when you don't try to understand everything rationally, but when you allow divine wisdom to work within you intuitively. That's when you stop asking questions and start listening to answers. It's when you stop trying to control and start trusting. That's when you stop despairing and start hoping. And it is in this contemplative silence that you are transformed. Because when you hold events in your heart, you're not just storing information, you're allowing those events to change who you are. You're allowing pain to make you more compassionate. You're allowing confusion to make you more humble. You're allowing experience to make you wiser. Mary didn't just observe the events. Mary was transformed by the events. She became a woman of extraordinary faith. She became a woman of profound wisdom. She became a woman who could stand by her son while he suffered because she had learned to trust God through all the confusing events of her life. And you can do the same. Here's the truth no one wants to hear. You're desperate for immediate answers. You want to know now why this is happening. You want to know now how it will end. You want to know now what the purpose is. But God doesn't work that way. God works in His own time. God reveals things gradually. God requires you to trust the process, and that's why you're suffering. Not because God is being cruel, but because you're resisting the process. You're trying to force answers that will only come with time. You're trying to see the whole picture when you're in the middle of putting the puzzle together. But when you learn to wait and meditate, when you learn to trust the process, suffering changes its nature. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes meaningful. It becomes part of a larger story. It becomes part of a divine transformation. And that's when you finally find peace. Not the peace of having all the answers, but the peace of trusting that there is someone who has all the answers. The peace of knowing you are not alone. The peace of recognizing that everything is working together for your good. This is the peace that Mary had. This is the peace that you can have. All you need to do is learn to save, learn to meditate, learn to trust the process, and to do it in silence. Now comes the part that will unsettle you. The part that will challenge everything you believe in. The part that will force you to look at yourself with brutal honesty. Perhaps the reason you don't hear God isn't because He is silent. Perhaps it's because you're making too much noise. Think about it for a moment. Really think about it. When was the last time you spent 10 minutes in absolute silence? No cell phone, no music, no podcasts, no audiobook, no TV, nothing, just you and the silence. If you're honest, you probably can't remember. And you know what's worse? Most people panic just thinking about it. You feel anxious just imagining 10 minutes without any distractions. Your body starts to get restless. Your mind starts screaming. You want to grab your phone. You want to turn on the TV. You want to do anything but stay there, in silence, with yourself. Why? The answer is unsettling, because in silence you find yourself, and many people are afraid of what they might discover. In silence, you cannot escape yourself. You cannot distract yourself. You cannot pretend. You cannot hide. You are alone with your thoughts, your emotions, your wounds, your insecurities, and it's terrifying. You may discover that you are weaker than you thought. You may discover that you are more selfish than you thought. You may discover that you are living a lie. You may discover that you are not who you pretend to be, and that's why you make noise. That's why you get distracted. That's why you fill your life with activities, relationships, and consumption. You are running away from yourself. But here's the twist that will change everything. The silence you avoid is precisely the gateway to the transformation you seek. You are seeking transformation. You are seeking change. You are seeking to become a better person. You are seeking peace, purpose, meaning. But you're looking in all the wrong places. You are searching in relationships. You are searching in careers. You are searching in money. You are searching in success. You are searching in experiences. You are searching everywhere but within yourself. And that's why you can't find it. Because the transformation you seek isn't outside of you. It's inside you. And you can only access it through silence. When you finally fall silent, when you finally face yourself, that's when transformation begins. That's when you see who you truly are. That's when you acknowledge your wounds. That's when you acknowledge your fears. That's when you acknowledge your limitations. And it is in this recognition that you change. Because when you see the truth about yourself, when you stop pretending, when you stop hiding, when you stop running away, you can finally do something about it. You can finally ask for help. You can finally allow God to work in you. But while you're making noise, while you're distracted, while you're running away from yourself, nothing changes. You remain the same person. You continue making the same mistakes. You continue living the same empty life. Now, let me resolve the main conflict you may be experiencing. You might be thinking, okay, but saints were special people. They had privileged access to God. They had special gifts. I'm not like them. I can't do what they did. But that's a lie you believe. Saints were not special people who had privileged access to God. Saints were ordinary people who mastered the art of silence. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. Saint Anthony was an ordinary man. He spent years in the desert, in silence, listening to God. And through that silence, he was transformed. He became an instrument of God. He became a living witness to the divine. Saint Teresa of Avila was an ordinary woman. She spent hours in silent prayer, meditating, contemplating, and through that silence, she was transformed. She became an extraordinary mystic. She became a profound writer. She became a reformer of the church. Saint Francis was an ordinary man. He withdrew to nature, to silence, to listen to God. And through that silence, he was transformed. He became a man of extraordinary peace. He became an instrument of reconciliation. He became a living witness to divine love. None of them were special. None of them had extraordinary gifts. None of them had privileged access. What they had was willingness. Willingness to be silent. Willingness to face themselves. Willingness to allow God to work in their lives. And you can do the same. But here's a question I'll leave open, because it's important that you carry it with you. If God wants to speak to you, and you finally become silent to listen to him, what will he say? This is the question you need to answer, because the answer will change your life. Perhaps he will say you need to forgive the person who hurt you. Perhaps he will say you're on the wrong path. Change direction. Perhaps he will say you are loved. You are valuable. You are worthy. Perhaps he will say you need to let die who you were and be born who you can be. Perhaps he will say something you never expected to hear, but you'll only find out if you silence it. Let me tell you one last event that will illustrate all of this. A few years ago, a man sought out a priest because he was in crisis. He had lost his job, his marriage was falling apart, he was depressed, he was desperate. The priest listened to him, and then he said something simple. Do you want me to solve your problems? Or do you want me to help you find the solution within yourself? The man replied, I want you to solve my problems. The priest said, then you're in the wrong place, because nobody can solve your problems but yourself. And you will only find the solution when you are silent and listen to the voice of God within you. The man was frustrated. He had expected a quick answer. He had expected a magic solution. But the priest continued. For the next 7 days, set aside 15 minutes of absolute silence each day. No music, no cell phone, no distractions. Just you and God. And then, come back and tell me what you discovered. The man hesitated, but he was desperate enough to try. The first day was terrible. His mind was screaming. His body was in turmoil. He wanted to give up. The second day was a little better, but it was still uncomfortable. On the third day, something changed. He began to hear not an audible voice, but an inner clarity, a feeling that he was not alone. On the fourth day, he began to cry, because he finally saw himself. He saw how selfish he had been. He saw how he had hurt the people he loved. He saw how he had been running away from himself. On the fifth day, he began to receive guidance. He clearly saw what he needed to do. He saw that he needed to ask for forgiveness. He saw that he needed to change his life. On the sixth day, he began to act. He asked his wife for forgiveness. He started looking for a new job. He began to rebuild his life. On the seventh day, he returned to the priest with tears in his eyes. He said, "I don't understand what happened. I just kept quiet. But everything changed. I changed." The priest smiled and said, "You haven't changed. You've just finally found yourself. And when you find yourself, you find God. And when you find God, everything changes." This man is not a fictional story. This is a pattern that constantly repeats itself. People who become silent, who confront themselves, who listen to God, and who are transformed. And you could be next.